Well, welcome back to Donington Park, everybody, for our second and final race for the Sports 2000 Championship. Round 9 of the Championship coming up for you earlier on. We saw a race earlier on today that saw Justin Law claim the race victory, that being his third race win of the season so far, from Richard Johnson and Mackenzie Walker, the top three. But for one driver, his championship aspirations probably evaporated. That was poor old Michael Gibbons, the reigning champion, who retired on the very first lap of the race. And on the basis that this grid is formed from the finishing positions from earlier on, Michael Gibbons has got a lot of overtaking to do if he wants to try and add a significant amount of points to his championship tally. So the cars making their way out onto circuit. The split grid, we'll see the Duratec cars line up at the front of the grid, and then there'll be a couple of rows gap before we then see the Pinto class cars line up. They work their way out onto circuit. All the Duratec cars and the Pintos are now just about to leave the assembly area. We're on the full Donington Park Grand Prix circuit, and such is the entry list this weekend from the Sports 2000 Championship. We can't accommodate all of the cars on the grid. There is one reserve, number 7, Mike Turner, who did get to race earlier on today because of retirements early on in the race. He, I'm sure, may well be in the pit lane area somewhere. Not there just as yet, but the cars are out on the circuit, so I should be able to guide you through the grid and the way that they line up as the final few cars now leave the assembly area. Let's have a look at the grid then. It's based on the finishing positions from earlier on today. It's Joshua Law that sits on pole position with Richard Johnson alongside him, and it's Mackenzie Walker and David Houghton that are there on row number 2. Tim Tudor, who was on pole for the first race earlier on today but didn't get a great start, he starts 5th on this one, and alongside him is Paul Traherne, and it's Tom Stoughton and Roger Donnan that complete the 4th row of the grid. Row 5 of the grid is Ashley Law and Nick Bates, and it's Peter Brower and Josh Needham that line up on row number 6. Next up on the inside of row number 7 is John Owen. He's got Andrew Noble for company, and then it's Rolo Tomasi and Andrew Butler that are there on row number 8. The 9th row of the grid sees Tony Barwell line up alongside Adrian Ridge, and from then on in we're into the retirements from earlier on today. Steve O and Bryn Tootle line up on row number 10. The 11th row of the grid is Andy Chittenden and Grant Gibson, and the 12th row of the grid, watch out for number 1, the reigning champion Michael Gibbons, right at the sharp end of the championship but retired earlier on, alongside John Eiley. That's all the Duratec cars. Then the next row of the grid will be the first row for the Pinto class cars. Nick Johnson and Marcus Weller, the front row of the grid for Pinto. Paul Street and Chris Snowden are next up. Then it's Mike Fry and Simon Aldworth, with Clive Steeper keeping David Muse for company on what will be the 16th row of the grid. Next row we'll see Nick Bailey line up alongside Chris Clifton, and it will be Peter Needham and Patrick Clifton that are at the tail end of the order, with the possibility of adding in a number 7 car, which is Mike Turner, who is the reserve and is hoping that he might be able to get involved in this race if problems befall others earlier on. So might we see Joshua Law claim another victory, which would be a back-to-back victory for him. He's not had one of those so far this year. When he has claimed wins, he hasn't claimed 2 at the same race circuit. So Silverstone, he took a second and a first. Brands, he took 2 seconds. Silverstone last time out, a second and a first. Alton Park was just a single one because it was their endurance format at Alton Park. So are we going to see a double win here for Joshua Law? Might Richard Johnson or Mackenzie Walker or David Houghton have something to say about that? Might Tim Tudor get a better start and put himself in the mix for this one? And what about number 1, which is going to be Michael Gibbons, off the very, very back of the order for the overall win? And when it comes to the win in the likes of the Pinto class, well, Nick Johnson had a good battle with Will Shriver in the Pinto class earlier on, but Will Shriver shares the car, so the number 37 car for this race is not Will Shriver. It's going to be Marcus Weller that takes over, so we'll see as to whether Nick Johnson and Marcus Weller can resume their squabble in the Pinto class. So the front few rows of the grid all coming into position. There's a bit of smoke there from Mackenzie Walker's car by the look of things. Now that does not look overly healthy at this stage, so hopefully that will clear itself. And then, yes, it's finally cleared by the look of things. A little bit of throttle and it sort of came back briefly, but it has disappeared. That's one good thing. We don't want any smoking Sports 2000. We had a very smoky one that was on fire at Alton Park last time out. But yeah, still a little bit of smoke there. So hopefully all is well. So we've got pretty much all of the Duratec cars just about into position. Final few Duratec cars just edging their way forward, which will include John Eiley's number 44 car. That's the yellow and black car just coming into position at the tail end of the order. And then, of course, we've got all of the Pinto class cars to try and get lined up, which will include Simon Aldworth there. Then the number 17 car of Clive Steeper. Then it will be the number 2 machine of David Muse at the wheel of his Shrike, isn't it, by the look of that, I think. And then Nick Bailey, Chris Clifton, Peter Needham, Patrick Clifton, all to come into position. So there's Nick Bailey's machine. Chris Clifton is next up at the wheel of the number 23 car, at the wheel of his Tiger. And then Peter Needham in the number 45 car, which is Van Diemen. And then the very back of the grid should see the number 96 car line up, and that will be the Tiger, which harks back to 1979, that car, so the best part of almost 50 years old now, at the tail end of the order. So just coming up into position now, and the white car with the almost Martini-esque stripes down the centre of it of Patrick Clifton. And then I think we've pretty much got everybody where we need them. The car that was smoking at the front of the grid, I think, has attracted the attention of the officials, Mackenzie Walker. So I did say there was a bit of smoke, which was slightly worrying as to what was happening with his car. And he is going to be pushed off the grid by the look of things, so being instructed by the marshals as to where he needs to be going. So I'm not unsurprised that he's not taking part in the race. Enormous shame for Mackenzie Walker, but the difficult thing they now need to do is try and shuffle his car out of harm's way to get him onto the grass. So I think they're going to drag him backwards a little bit, get him to straighten up the steering wheel, then push him in between the gap of the two cars on the front row, which is Joshua Law and Richard Johnson, and then a bit of right hand down onto the grass, and then hopefully the car won't bottom out and they can get the car safely out of harm's way, as close towards the barriers as they can. But that's a big old shame for Mackenzie Walker, who had a great run earlier on today. I'm going to say was running up there in third place for the vast majority of the race, only finished 2 3/4 seconds off the race winner. So it was all rather close. The top three cars were separated by less than 2 3/4 seconds in the race. So Mackenzie hops over the barriers, the car out of harm's way, right up against the wall on the right-hand side of the circuit, the start-finish line. And then we'll wait and see as to when we get the race underway. Green flag is waved at the tail end of the field. Joshua Law in the black and the green and the purple car on pole position. Richard Johnson alongside. The lights go out and away go the Duratec cars. The Pintos will get going in a few moments' time. Joshua Law leads from Richard Johnson. It looks as though it's a good start this time from Tim Tudor, who is trying to carve his way through into second place if he can. Got himself alongside Richard Johnson as they went in towards Redgate Corner, and is going to come out just ahead of him and up into second place. So the man who qualified on pole but didn't have a great race earlier on has had a brilliant start to this one. The Pintos get going and work their way onto the start-finish line. Also, Mike Turner, the reserve, has got going now as well. Because of the problems for Mackenzie Walker, it does mean that Mike Turner can get involved in the race. So for the lead of the Pintos, Nick Johnson in the blue car, wheel to wheel with Marcus Weller as they went down through the Craner curves. We'll see as to who comes out in the lead of the Pinto class as the Duratec front runners carve their way round through McLean's Corner and up towards Coppice for the first time. Who's leading the Pintos? Is it still going to be Nick Johnson? Yes, it is, from Marcus Weller. And third in the Pintos, I think that's Chris Snowden, the number 32 car that's third in the Pintos. Chris, who has been a race winner in the Pinto class this year and is a former champion. Huge amounts of racing experience, not just in Sports 2000, but he was an Alfa Romeo champion some years ago, was Chris Snowden, in a big GTV6. So up towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. They flick their way left and then right, and then as they work their way onto the Melbourne loop, we've got Steve O trying to make progress through the order. Locks on the brakes, trying to squeeze his way through and past Tony Barwell's car. Steve was a retirement earlier on. He retired up towards McLean's Corner, but our race leader, Joshua Law, chalks the first lap into the book and has clear daylight between himself and Richard Johnson in second place. Tim Tudor's there in third. David Houghton is in fourth place. Looks like it's Tom Stoughton who's there in fifth, and Paul Traherne, I think, completes the top six as they head over the start-finish line. And for the Pintos, it is still the blue machine, which is number 62, which will be the Lola of Nick Johnson, that just about hangs on to the lead of the Pinto class, leading Pinto Historic A, so that is for cars that were manufactured after 2006 or anything that was converted to Pinto specification after 2012, whereas the car that's hunting him down, which is going to be the car of Marcus Weller, runs in the Class B, and that will be cars manufactured before 2007 and converted to Pinto specification before 2013. So our race leader, Josh Law, still leading the way. The amount of daylight increasing between himself and Richard Johnson. For third position, well, Tim Tudor is now finding himself under a bit more pressure from David Houghton, who's looking to try and wiggle his way through. The leaders of the Pinto class are now catching some of the tail enders in the Duratec class, so that's going to make things interesting again for Nick Johnson and for Marcus Weller. David Houghton has another little nibble on Tim Tudor to see if he can work his way up into the podium spots, but Tim having none of it just as yet. So he still remains in third place, having started fifth on the grid. A couple of places gained from him. The big gainer is Michael Gibbons. I said watch out for the number 1 car. How about Michael Gibbons gaining something like 19 places on the first lap, the reigning champion, number 1. So watch out for Michael Gibbons. Where is he on track at the moment? It's just in his batch of cars heading over the start-finish line now, I think, is he? Yeah, there he goes. Up the inside of Nick Bates, takes a further place away, and now the next car he's going to attack will be Roger Donnan. And that would mean that if he gets there, then he'll be in 7th position. So Michael Gibbons pushing hard at the wheel of the number 1 car. There's another retirement. That's Steve O again. Oh, so unfortunate. Retired in the first race. And further retirements for Steve in this race. So the MCR out for the second time today. And this is their final race of the day as well for the Sports 2000 Championship. Not their final weekend of racing, because they've still got Snetterton to come. Right, down through the Craner curves. Now Bryn Tootle here at the wheel of the number 54 car. He didn't race in the first race, so it's his first opportunity. He has managed to gap the car that is in between him. Is going to be, what's it going to be, a Pinto car ahead, Pinto car behind Nick Johnson and Marcus Weller. So Bryn Tootle is between those two now. Elsewhere through the order, we've still got the number 7 car of Mike Turner trying to work his way through, because of course he was the reserve in the number 7 car and is trying to carve his way through the order. The overall race leaders, though, will be heading towards the completion of lap number 3 before too much longer. So up towards Goddard's will come Joshua Law, the race leader. There he goes over the start-finish line. Richard Johnson in 2nd place, and David Houghton has gone through into 3rd position. He's got himself ahead of Timothy Tudor on that lap, and we might also have a change for what will be 5th and 6th place, because Tom Stoughton is under pressure from Paul Traherne, and if they look in their mirrors, Michael Gibbons is right there as well. Remember, Gibbons is 7th at the moment, but he has come from 23rd on the grid, and they've only done 3 laps of racing so far, so watch out for that black and light blue machine, which is sort of hovering around in the background of the shot as they head down through the Craner curves and the old hairpin. So the Gun TS14 under pressure from the Gun TS11. Michael Gibbons in his MCR beginning to close in as well. Up towards McLean's corner they will go. And as for the historic class, we've still got some good fights going on in historic. There's Peter Needham at the wheel of the Van Diemen. Now he will be looking to try and work his way in towards the mid-20s if he can. So he's just outside of the mid-20s at the moment at the wheel of the number 45 car. He's trying to hunt down Mike Fry that lies ahead of him. Mike Fry has got another car just up the road from him, which is going to be, I think it's at the 54 that's just up the road from him. So all the way through the order there are good battles to be had. Paul Street about to get picked off by Bryn Tootle, but he's giving him absolutely no inch of tarmac to go onto. So Paul Street just making sure he keeps Bryn Tootle behind. So that's one of the Duratec cars fighting away with a Pinto. And they'll head down in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's, as over the start-finish line comes Michael Gibbons, and he's going to pick off Paul Traherne here, and he's going to pick off Tom Stoughton as well. 3 wide up towards Redgate Corner. Paul Traherne hugging the right-hand side of the circuit, backs out of the move. Michael Gibbons sweeps across the nose of both. So 2 places gained again for Michael Gibbons. He is now up into 5th position from 23rd on the grid after just 4 laps of racing. Now Michael Gibbons will disappear up the road, and he will leave Tom Stoughton and Paul Traherne to carry on with their battle over what will now be the final place inside the top 6. Out of the old hairpin, starting to climb uphill. Now for the lead of the Pintos in the historic class, this is Nick Johnson still leading it, having to work his way past a little bit of traffic there, which was Andrew Butler's car. So that is still for position. That is the quicker Pinto cars overtaking some of the slower Duratecs. And for the lead of the Pinto class, the historic section, down through Craner curves they'll go. Nick Johnson has been pretty consistent all season in the historic class. Only once this year has he not secured victory in the historic class, and that was one of the races at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit where he didn't finish. But other than that, he has been absolutely the man to beat in the Pinto class so far this year. Now, whether he can hang on to it or whether Marcus Weller has got something to offer up, we'll have to wait and see. Right, further down through the order, that will be Andrew Noble. Andrew Noble squabbling away with the number 28 car, which is John Owen. And again, I think this will be for position between the pair of them. It's going to be for something like 11th and 12th places. Peter Brouwer should be just behind them. He is, with the black car with the sort of grey and the blue flash down it. But they come wheel to wheel up towards the braking area for Redgate Corner. John Owen has the inside line. Andrew Noble is going to try and sweep his way around the outside and then try and cut back. So the MCR under pressure from one of the earlier guns, the gun TS7, as they start to descend down through the Craner curves once more. So good little fight is this for what will be 11th and 12th places. Up towards Redgate Corner comes the fight for the historic class still. Still being headed by Nick Johnson at the wheel of his Lola. The Royale of Marcus Weller still within touching distance. He's not quite close enough to mount a challenge down in towards the old hairpin, that's for sure. They are in different sections of the historic class because Nick Johnson's car is in historic A, whereas Marcus Weller's runs in historic B, so they're both respective class leaders. But of course, what you want to do is try and scoop up the maximum points that you can in the overall Pinto Championship. And at the moment, Marcus Weller is having to give second best to the Lola that sits ahead of him. There's more traffic up the road that they'll need to deal with as well, and they'll need to try and pick their way through and past the Duratecs as quickly and as efficiently as they possibly can. And the next car that will need picking off is going to be the car of Andy Chittenden. So in towards the braking area for Fogarty S's goes Andy Chittenden. Lots of sports car racing experience, less so in Sports 2000s, which he's only moved to in recent years. Andy originally started appearing racing things like Radical SR1s and moved through and did a bit in SR3s, but has now turned his attention to Sports 2000 and is absolutely thoroughly enjoying what has been a busy season and a packed grid as well here this weekend. Fight still continues also for 11th and 12th places, which is going to be now Andrew Noble, who has finally got himself ahead of John Owen. So they have shuffled the order, that pair. Peter Brouwer is not too far away in the background, and then he has got what will be the number 25 car, and that will be Joshua Needham, not that far away. They work their way past Chris Clifton's Pinto machine, so dealing with some of the slower Pinto cars that they're in the process of lapping, still with 14 minutes to go in this race. Now, can Joshua Needham unlock the door on Peter Brouwer and go through and ahead of the Lola Fox? Well, he's trying. He's pushing hard at the wheel of his Van Diemen. Pick up the toe in a straight line. Try and close in, but again, just that little bit too far away, heading in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. So Peter Brouwer still hangs on to the place. As for our overall race leader, well, Joshua Law has now still leading, but the lead advantage between himself and Richard Johnson is only 0.7 of a second, so there's not much from first to second place. And then there's a good fight going on for third now as well. David Houghton, Timothy Tudor and Michael Gibbons are all together for third, fourth and fifth position. Down in towards the Melbourne hairpin goes Nick Bailey. He's got Patrick Clifton right behind him. That's the car that started off the tail end of the order. So they are still having a good fight for places down towards the bottom of the top 30. There were best part of nearly 40 cars started this race. Not quite, because there are a few rows gap between the Duratecs and the Pintos, but something like 36, 38 cars on the grid. And that's what they'll be squabbling for down towards the tail end of the order. They've got the race leaders, I would have thought, beginning to close up on them before too much longer as well. So keep an eye towards the back mark Calapari that will be taking place. As for Michael Gibbons, 23rd on the grid up to 5th, knocking on the door potentially of 3rd if he keeps pushing. David Houghton working his way through and past the traffic. Now he is in 3rd place, but if you look behind him, Michael Gibbons is already there. He has got through and ahead of the number 40 car of Timothy Tudor, and Michael Gibbons here is going for 3rd place up the inside of David Houghton. gets the cut back midway through the Melbourne hairpin, and Michael Gibbons from 23rd on the grid is now up into 3rd position. So it has been a brilliant recovery drive from Michael, who is a multiple champion in Sports 2000 racing, largely in the Duratec class, but he did claim a championship win overall in the Pinto class quite some years ago. That was best part of, I think, 11 years ago now. But he really has found a home as a front runner in the Duratec category. And we'll look to see if he can then push even harder. 12 minutes to go. He is 14 seconds adrift of catching Richard Johnson, which sounds like a tall order, doesn't it? But he was a second quicker on some laps than Richard Johnson. Last time through, of course, with the overtakes, Michael Gibbons was a little bit slower, but he'll keep pushing and see if he can just edge away from the likes of David Houghton and Timothy Tudor. David, long time Sports 2000 racer. Mentioned earlier on, best part of at least a quarter of a century David's been racing in Sports 2000s. And as they work their way onto the exhibition straight, Michael Gibbons in his newly acquired 3rd position, David Houghton in 4th, Timothy Tudor in 5th place. They're a fair way up the road now from the 6th place car, which is still number 71, Paul Traherne. And it's Tom Stoughton, Roger Donham, Nick Bates, and the number 73 car, which will be Ashley Law, that completes the top 10 at this stage. So over the start-finish line, more traffic to deal with as they catch some of the historic class cars, and that will be down a lap now for the next of the historic class cars that's just gone through. The next car that they'll then want to catch will be Peter Needham, I think, at the wheel of his Van Diemen, and the race leader is already through and past Peter Needham just as they get onto the top of the Craner curves and down through Hollywood. Whereas for Richard Johnson, he is delayed whilst lapping traffic and is not going to be able to go through. Now, Peter Needham actually lost a place there to Michael Fry. Mike Fry took the opportunity to wiggle his way through and past, so I hope there's not a problem for Peter Needham, because that car just seemed to be a little bit slow down through that section of the circuit. Started off the back of the grid on the final row. More traffic to deal with, this time hopping up the curb and the inside of Chris Snowden goes our race leader. Chris was running last time we picked up in it 3rd in the historic class. He has now dropped to, I think, 4th in the historic class, and into the pit lane, I'm afraid, has come Simon Aldworth's car. So Simon is going to turn left and go to the paddock area, and also another car destined for the pit lane, I think, is the second retirement for John Eiley, the number 44 car, I think that was, in the pit lane. So 10 minutes to go, 9 laps completed. We squeezed 10 laps out of the race earlier on today. And for Joshua Law, it was a busy old race for him. It's going to be a busy race for this one, because again, there's traffic to deal with. Chris Clifton's car is the next of those that they want to try and move their way through and past. And then the next little car that will need dispatching a lap down will be the number 36 car, which is Rollo Tomasi. Rollo Tomasi, I think many years ago, used to race Formula Renault single-seaters, if memory serves me correctly. I'm trying to think where I know the name from. Definitely not Sports 2000s. I'm sure it was single-seaters, Rollo Tomasi. So David Houghton now looking to try and work his way through some traffic as well. There's also traffic that needs dealing with, and that will be dealt with on the approach up towards Coppice Corner. It's the number 7 car, which is going to be Mike Turner. How far has Mike Turner got up through the order? Because, of course, he started in the pit lane. Still only 25th, so he's slowly working his way up. He's having a good little squabble with Bryn Tootle at the moment, and then just up the road from them is the number 14 car, which is going to be the car of Adrian Ridge. So Mike Turner has made some good progress from the pit lane area, and now Bryn Tootle is weaving his way around to see if he can unlock the door and gain a place. And they're all about to be lapped by the race leader, who is closing in on them, which is Joshua Law. So Joshua Law needs to be careful here. He's got back markers he wants to get past, but they are squabbling back markers. Bryn Tootle sees him coming. The number 7 car of Mike Turner sees him coming, and then he also decisively nips up the inside of Adrian Ridge, heading towards Goddard's them. So they can all continue their little battle now. Our race leader has dealt with them as Joshua Law, and he now enjoys what is a 3.3 second gap between himself and Richard Johnson in second position. Michael Gibbons is there in third, and at the moment isn't really making huge amounts of inroads into the gap between himself and Richard Johnson just up the road. There's 11.2 seconds gap between the pair of them. He was about 2 seconds quicker on that lap, but that was largely because of traffic, I would have thought, more than anything. So I think probably third is as good as it's going to get for Michael Gibbons, but that's still not bad considering he came from 23rd on the grid. So still traffic to deal with. Richard Johnson still just picking his way past Mike Turner, and then nips up the inside of Bryn Tootle as they turn in towards McLean's corner. So Bryn in 23rd, Mike Turner in 24th. Rolo Tomasi in the background of the shot, the blue car with the yellow stripe, in 25th position. And as for the lead of the historic class, again, just picking up on that, it is still in 17th place Nick Johnson that leads the historic class by about 2.25 seconds now from Marcus Weller. But the good thing for Nick Johnson is he might be 17th, but Marcus Weller is in 19th place. There is a Duratec car between Nick Johnson and the car of Marcus Weller, and now you can see as they come over the start-finish line, that Duratec car is Tony Barwell's number 77 car. So that's a nice little buffer to have as far as Nick Johnson is concerned. So over the start-finish line will come the race leader. This is lap number 12 now. Richard Johnson still there in second position. And where's Michael Gibbons? Because he might even be on the start-finish line, the Wheatcroft straight at the same time as the leading pair. Yeah, so the top three separated by 14.4 seconds at this stage. But Michael Gibbons has just set his best individual lap of the race, and he was 1.7 seconds quicker than Richard Johnson with 6 minutes to go. He could get there, you know, Michael Gibbons. In fourth place, I'm afraid to say. I think David Houghton has picked up a time penalty for track limits. So, yes, he has a 5-second penalty for David Houghton in fourth position, the number 8 car. So add 5 seconds to his lap time, that would drop him down to 5th. So Tim Tudor would pick up the place on corrected times, but that's as bad as it's going to get for David Houghton at the moment, just a single drop of position. So over the start-finish line, we've still got these fights going on. That was Andrew Noble just going through. So that's going to be something like 10th, 11th, 12th places, just working their way onto the top of Hollywood, including the light blue car in the hands of Joshua Needham. He's looking to try and close in on the car that sits just ahead of him, which is going to be the number 28 car, the black with the blue. And that will be the car of Owen, won't it? John Owen. And then the number 4 car, which is just ahead of them, is Nick Bates. But the problem for Nick Bates is, news has just reached me, he has also picked up a 5-second penalty for track limits at the wheel of the number 4 car. So the man from Leicester, who raced, I think was it a Lola or a Shrike for many years in this championship, has now got this very distinctive yellow and red MCR at his disposal. He just comes up towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. He's got Chris Clifton's car to try and deal with. He will thread his way through and past that, and then can crack on again to try and make amends for the 5 seconds that he's going to pick up. So add 5 seconds to his time, that's going to have more of an impact, because that's going to drop him from what is 9th on the road, I think maybe even to 13th, something like that, on corrected times. So 4 minutes of this race to go, round 9 of the championship. Snetterton in Norfolk, the final weekend of racing from what I believe is a treble header down there. 3 20-minute races over the weekend of the 11th, 12th of October. And for Joshua Law, well, he has accumulated points well today with what looks like 2 wins now, because he is nearly 5 seconds up the road from Richard Johnson, who is pushing hard now. Richard Johnson has got the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 32.813 in second position, but he's just gone quicker than he's previously gone individually through the first sector, and an absolute best through the second sector, the second place number 21 car. So he is certainly pushing on. Over the start-finish line comes Grant Gibson. Number 67 car also just coming through as well. Up towards 62, I should say, just coming through, which is Nick Johnson, the historic class leader. And he's about to be lapped again, potentially, by our overall race leader, which is Joshua Law. Second place in the historic class, still going the way of Marcus Weller at this stage. Marcus down in 18th position. He's coming under attack from the number 9 car, which is going to be Andrew Butler's Duratec machine. So down through the old hairpin, they will thread their way. Marcus Weller in the car that Will Shriver drove to second in the historic class earlier on today. But he's just going to have to give second best again from Nick Johnson, who I say has been the man to beat in historics this year. He really has had a brilliant season of racing in the historic category for those cars with the Pinto engines. And the number 37 car is just going to come up short again, as it did in the hands of Will Shriver earlier on today. So for the lead of the race, our race leader, number 91 car, in the hands of Joshua Law, with just 2 minutes to go, has only got, I would imagine, probably the lap he's about to start and one more, I would have thought. So he'll just be working his way out of the Melbourne hairpin. In towards the Melbourne hairpin comes the second place number 21 car, still with traffic to deal with. That's Tony Barwell's car that needs to move out of harm's way. And when Joshua Law comes over the start-finish line, he is going to have less than a lap time left, actually, I think. So let's just wait and see as he comes through and over the start-finish line. Now, there was 1 minute and 30 to go, and that took 1 minute and 34. So should be onto the last lap of the race this time through for Joshua Law. And it looks as though with the gap that he's got, he's surely going to make it 2 out of 2. Richard Johnson is too far away. And in the background of the shot there, you can also see that Michael Gibbons is still continuing around in third position at this stage. David Houghton is fourth on the road, but will lose that on corrected times because he's got a 5-second penalty. Tim Tudor is fifth on the road, and Tom Stoughton completes the top 6. Then it's Roger Donham that's 7th. 8th is Ashley Law. 9th is Nick Bates, but he is another car that has a 5-second penalty for track limits. And Andrew Noble is the driver that completes the top 10 at this stage. So still leading the historic class is going to be the car of, I'm going to say Nick Johnson, but has his car disappeared? I'm just having a quick look. The number 62 car has, no, he is there. He's in 16th position. Couldn't see him for looking. Marcus Weller is second in the historic class. And who's third in the historic class? It's going to be Paul Street, who's third in the historic class, going well at the wheel of the Lola T87. So Joshua Law onto the Melbourne loop for the final time. He's going to squeeze his way up the inside of Andy Chittenden, who sees him coming and lets him go through. And there might be one more car to deal with, which will be Grant Gibson's car, which he might catch as they head up towards Goddard's, but I don't think so. I think Grant Gibson probably is going to just about remain on the lead lap. So through the final corner, round 9 of the 2025 Sports 2000 Championship goes the way of Joshua Law, who still continues to lead the championship. It's going to be Richard Johnson who finishes in second place, as he did earlier on today. But what a drive from the number 1 car in the hands of Michael Gibbons, retired in the race earlier on today. This grid is based on the finishing results from the first race, and Michael Gibbons, from 23rd on the grid, comes through to finish on the overall podium in third position. Fourth place should go the way of Tim Tudor on corrected times. He finishes behind David Houghton on the road, but David picked up a 5-second penalty, so Tim Tudor finishes in fourth place. David Houghton in fifth position, and sixth should be Tom Stoughton, who is just coming up towards Goddard's corner now. We have already had our historic class leader over the start-finish line, which is now confirmed as being Nick Johnson from Marcus Weller, and Paul Street will be the car that is third home in the historic class. A few more cars still to take the checkered flag, including one person who's been rather busy, the number 22 car of Andrew Noble, who has always had somebody to squabble with, and he is just going to come over the start-finish line ahead of John Owen. And they were also being chased by Joshua Needham as they came through, so they've had pretty much a race-long battle. So good little squabble from all of those, and they all managed to overtake, in terms of corrected times, Nick Bates, because his 5-second penalty did see him lose a few places, dropping down from something like 9th down to 13th position. So just Grant Gibson to take the checkered flag, and that will be the last of the cars through. The Antipodean just working his way out of what is Goddard's, over the start-finish line and the checkered flag, and that's the second of our Sports 2000 Championship races from here at Donington Park. Let's just confirm some results for you then. The win, his second of the day, goes the way of Joshua Law, which does his championship aspirations no harm at all. Richard Johnson was second, and Michael Gibbons, what a drive from 23rd to 3rd. Tim Tudor was 4th, ahead of David Houghton 5th, and Tom Stoughton was 6th. Roger Donham was next up in 7th, ahead of Ashley Law, followed by Andrew Noble, and John Owen completed the top 10. Once you're outside the top 10, then in 11th position, it was going to be Joshua Needham, who was there in 11th place, with Peter Brower in 12th, and dropping down to 13th with time penalties was Nick Johnson. Andy Chittenden was the first of the cars that was down a lap, and in 16th place, Nick Johnson secures victory in the historic class from the car that finished in 19th place, which was going to be Marcus Weller, who was second in historics, and completing the top 20, the car that completes the historic podium, which was going to be Paul Street. You can see the rest of the finishers there, all the way down through the 30s and into what are almost 40 cars that we had on the grid. A busy old race, fantastic racing as ever from the Sports 2000s Championship. Hope that you enjoyed our racing from here at Donington Park. The Sports 2000 cars will next be out on circuit for their final weekend of racing in 2025 at Snetterton in Norfolk on the 11th and 12th of September, where we'll be crowning our 2025 champions. Thanks for joining us today at Donington Park. We'll catch you again very soon. Goodbye.